This video is going to cover how to complete a Lawhawk interview. It's assumed that you've already watched the videos on how to purchase a Lawhawk document and start an interview. So we're going to start here with the first page of an interview for a confidentiality agreement. There's a few things to note immediately that could be helpful. In the middle here is some introductory information which you can read, and that might give you some more information around how things work, where to go for more information, for instance, like the FAQ page, images of things to look out for, so that type of stuff. Over here on the side is what's called the interview outline. This is really helpful because it shows you where you're at in the process and how much more you've got to go and how much you've completed. Depending on how you answer some of the questions, the outline might get longer or shorter, depending on whether some kinds of questions become relevant or irrelevant. You can see up the top here that this introduction screen has a green tick against it already. That shows that this box is completely filled in and there's nothing further to do on it. But further down you can see that most of the boxes have got red asterisks, and that's showing that there's some information in there that still needs to be completed. This little indent sign here is an indication that this screen has some sub-levels. So if I click on that, you can see that it opens out and we've got space for a party name. One of the things that you'll find when you launch a number of documents is that very early on you'll go into the party details section, which is perhaps where the most complicated automation happens because there can be so many different options. This is where the different types of parties and some of the information that needs to be completed for them is all set out. Now before we dive into that, I just also want to mention over on the right hand side over here you've got this additional information pane. Keep an eye on that because as we go through question by question you'll find that there's a lot of guidance which is set out over there that will help you with how to answer particular questions. There may also be guidance in some cases displayed in this middle area. You might see a link to a video or something like that, for example. Up here at the top, just to the right of where it says answer summary, you'll see there's a help section. This could be useful to help you to understand how HotDocs, which is the software that we use, works and the different features that are available to you and how to navigate your way through things. You can print this out if that's helpful. Also up here is a document preview button. As we go through the interview on individual documents, this will start to become more useful as you can see the way that the document is starting to be filled out and get a sense of whether it's tracking in the way you expect it to. It's not particularly helpful right now because we haven't answered any of the questions, and so it's going to show there's a whole lot of empty spaces where the automation needs more information to work. Similarly, just to the right of the document preview is an answer summary. You'll find here the answers that you've entered for particular questions, and again you can print that out if it's helpful to be able to review it off screen. I should also note on the document preview that this won't always work for every set of documents that you're working on. It works here because we've got a confidentiality agreement which is one single document. If we were assembling a package of documents like a will and set of enduring powers of attorney, for example, because there's several documents that need to be assembled from one set of information, the preview doesn't work in that way. Alright, well let's get started. First thing we need to look at then is the party details. As I said, one of the most complicated areas for a lot of documents is the party details information because there's so many different types of parties that you might come across, and each one of them has their own different bits of information that require to be entered. So companies, for example, need a company name. Individuals need individual names. Trusts and partnerships need a name of the trust, perhaps the details of the trust deed, and also you need to enter trustee details. Partnerships are similar. Each trustee or partner could again be a different type, maybe an individual or a company or some other type. So when you start entering the details of the trustees and partners, that involves creating even further levels of detail, and it can start to look a little bit confusing. But that's really only because we're dealing with a very grunty automation system, and there's a potential to keep drilling down and adding more detail. But you do need a way to be able to express that in a way that you, the user, can understand. So just remember that you can drill down to get more levels of detail, but you can also work your way back up as you need to by clicking on the various levels. What we're going to do here is just keep this demonstration simpler, so let's just say that we're dealing with a New Zealand company. You can see on the screen here that some of the questions are marked with red text and others have black. What that means is that the red questions are mandatory, and that's why we've got these red asterisks showing over here, because there are mandatory questions that need to be answered. The black questions are optional. You might enter those details if you have them or if it's helpful, but you don't have to. If you see some text that's highlighted in blue, like here the company name or registration number, what that's showing is a hyperlink. By clicking on that, you can go to the company's register, for example, and check the company name and then enter that into the interview to make sure everything's all accurate. So now I'm just going to fill in the details for one party just so we can see how that's done. Okay, so you can see up the top here now that we've got a New Zealand company. We've given it a short name just to make it easier to see which party's which. We've given it ABC, full name ABC Limited, company number 12345, and we've entered in the parts of the address and identification details that are relevant, which is line 1, town and city, entered New Zealand. We're not going to enter any different addresses for delivery or postal. We don't need an email or a fax or a phone number, but we have entered that notices should go to the directors. But this is a confidentiality agreement, and that obviously means that we need more than one party that the information is going to be shared between. So now we need to add another party. So the way we do that is at the very bottom of the screen you can see click here to add another party. So on these repeat type fields, you'll always find a button down the bottom which you can click, and that will enable you to enter another repetition. So when we click on that, we see an identical screen and we can fill this in, and let's just choose this as being an individual. So once again we can see that we've got our individual is now filled in, individual, short name, full name details including occupation for the individual, and again the address details. No need for an individual to enter details about who notices would go to. And we can see we've got green ticks all the way down here so far. And we only want two parties to this particular document, so we can now move on to the next screen. Incidentally, we can move around the interview outline just by clicking on it. We've also got these navigation buttons down the bottom. We can go forward with next or back with previous. So a lot of these questions have been set up as multi-choice questions where you can just choose one of the options that's there. This makes it really easy to complete your interview without having to do a lot of typing. You can choose a particular option. You can see with choosing more options that the interview expands and there's a lot more questions. Less options will make it shorter. There's further options to make this long or short. We could have a longer form or a short form. Because we've gone with less options, it's suggesting a shorter form, and we've got a deed or an agreement, and we can have either mutual or one way. If I went mutual, that's kind of simpler. If I went one way, I'd have to select which of those parties we've entered is going to be disclosing. So I could say ABC, and Bob would therefore be the recipient. So the good thing is there's a lot of moving parts through the document that are all impacted by these questions, but you can change your answers very easily on screen, and that will automatically flow through in every place. So for example, if we change from a deed to an agreement, then every reference in the document would change from deed to agreement. Similarly for making it mutual, so if we think we need a one-way, but in negotiations the other party says, well, we have information to disclose to you, so it needs to be mutual, then we can just change that to mutual, just like that. So what I want to do here is select this option with more options showing, not because I want to show you lots of sections where I have to do typing, but just so I can show you some of the information features that are only visible on some of these more options screens. So if we jump down here to the confidential information screen, we can see here a different type of multi-choice question. Instead of having circles, we've actually got squares along the side there, and that indicates that unlike these ones, which are single select, these here are multi-select, and you can tick as many of these as are applicable. Now if I choose this third one, it brings up what we call a spreadsheet view, and this is similar to the party details, and it's a repeatable field, and it works quite similarly in the document, but where you've got less information to capture, we can do it on a spreadsheet rather than create a whole multi-tiered layout. So all you need to do here is to type the details in as many different relevant rows as you need. So let's do that. To add another row, I just click here, add row. Now you'll see that at the bottom here we have some options to add further rows, to insert a row above the row that we're on, to edit a row. If I came up here I could move this row down, so it's quite tailored, or I could delete the row. So these are all useful features to enter there. I should also note that on the other repeatable fields, for example, you can do similar things. So here we are on ABC. I can either come across here to the Actions tab at the top right and click Actions. So this gives me some options to clear all the answers on the screen, kind of a nuclear option, start again. I can enter new repetitions, or I can move repetitions down or up, or I can delete them. So similar things there. You can do the same thing when you see these three dots on the side of the outline. I could click on that and do the same thing there. So worth keeping in mind. On the flatter screens, the ones that aren't repeats, you've still got the option to clear all the answers, which again shows up there on the top right under the Actions tab. If you want to change the answer for a particular question, then you can just come in and change the answer yes to no, etc. You can also wipe that answer by just hovering over it, and you'll see that there's an X will be visible for many types of questions, and you can clear the answer there and go back to it. We've got a text field, there isn't a X, so if I hover over it, there isn't an easy way to clear that in that same way, so you just have to select the text and delete it and then enter your new answer in that way. In this particular document you can see that a number of questions have already been pre-answered, and that's just us using default techniques so that we can suggest what a good or common answer might be, just to help you save you time and give you an idea of how you might want to approach it, but you can change any of the answers to whatever you want at any time. So you can see that we're pretty much at the end of our interview process now. We've now got green ticks all the way down the left hand side except for the conclusion. Before I hit the finish button, I could now use the document preview function that we looked at earlier. If I click on the preview, we can now see that where we previously had asterisks, it's now filled in with the text of the answers that we had, and so you should be able to look through the document and see how it's been completed and confirm that it matches what your expectations are. And if there's something in there that doesn't look right, come back to the interview and you can adjust and make changes. You can move anywhere through the interview just by clicking on the outline to make changes. And in this case, when we get to the conclusion, we just need to confirm acceptance of the Lawhawk terms by typing yes, and I tab at the end of that and we can see that's done, and we could assemble the document. If at any time you do need to save your answers because you haven't got all the information you need, or you need to take a break and come back to it, you can just click here to save answers. There's a separate video showing how you can configure your browser for before you save answers or download the documents, which will enable you to set the name of the file and the location where it's saved to, which can be a really useful thing to do. So I'm not going to save the answers now, I'm just going to click finish, which will then send the document off for assembly. So I click finish, that sends it away where it's all merged together to create the document and the data file. This takes a few seconds, and we can now download our document answer file by clicking the red button. Because of that setting that I've set in the browser, it asks me where I want to save, and so I can choose a location where I want to save it and hit save, which then I can see at the bottom left of my screen here brings up the zip file that it's come down in. I can click on that zip file, and within the zip file I can see I've got my confidentiality agreement and my data file. I can extract those out of the zip file by clicking up here, extract all. I can set where I want that to go to and click extract. So I now have my document available and I can double click that. That now gives me my agreement in Microsoft Word form, and from here I can make any other changes to it that I feel are necessary.